there and at that particular moment?
Sure. I mean, the original film and the novel were set in the 80s. And the reason for that is simple, which is that it was really about Lindqvist's childhood. And it was the thing that I really connected to in the film, and I think that so many people who've seen the original connected to. And the thing is, the 80s in Sweden were a specific cultural experience, and I wanted to set it in the 80s in the United States, because that was sort of what I grew up with, sort of Reagan America, a time when they sort of talked about, he made these sort of announcements about how there was the evil empire, and how evil was something that was the Soviets. It was out there, the others, and that America was fundamentally good. And I wondered how a 12-year-old boy who is bullied so terribly that he has fantasies of murder and revenge, and falls in love with a very, very violent, primal, but also, you know, heartbreakingly tender vampire, how that person would deal with sort of living in a world where his feelings were not acceptable and not okay. And so that was really, you know, one of the things I loved about the movie and in the book was this sort of sense of this sort of the virgin snow and the blood, and that sort of contrast. So I really wanted to keep that snowy locale. And the original was set in a place called Blackburg, which is where Lindqvist grew up. And it was basically a planned community. And we, of course, in the United States have that. It's suburbia. It's like, you know, all of those communities and all of those Spielberg films. And the movie actually weirdly reminded me, when I read the book, about sort of that sort of world, like E.T., the sort of tract housing and that kind of stuff. And so I really wanted to try and find a quintessential American community, and I wanted to set it in one that was also a snowy locale. And so when we were looking, I originally set it in Colorado, and it turned out that there were these tremendous tax incentives if we went to New Mexico. And so I was like, okay, well, I'd never been to New Mexico, and I thought that it would be sort of like, there's no snow there, it'll be just desert. How's that going to work? And then they explained to me, no, it's the high desert that actually gets quite a lot of snow. It's John Ford country. Like, you see sort of great, grand American vistas. And then I got very excited. And actually, when I was writing the script, Drew Goddard, who wrote Cloverfield, is a friend of mine, and he's a huge fan of the original. I'm sure you guys all know him very well. He's loved here because of all of the amazing stuff that he's written, and Cabin in the Woods that he's doing, actually, which Richard did with him. And so he said to me, you know, when I was looking for a place to set it, and I mentioned Colorado, he had gone to college there, and he said, oh, that's a perfect place to set it. And so I was like, okay, great, because I wanted it to feel sort of like a small community, a tract housing kind of community that I had grown up in, but I didn't grow up in a snowy place like that. So when he suggested that, I thought it was great. When somebody suggested New Mexico, they said, well, what about Los Alamos? And that immediately made me think, oh wait, the atomic bomb. Talk about a community that grew up sort of overnight for a very, very unusual American story. And I looked online because I wanted to know about it. And very little filming has really been done in Los Alamos. And the first thing I see, it says famous alums, Drew Goddard. And I was like, what? So I called up Drew. I said, Drew, you went to college in Colorado, but you grew up in Los Alamos? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, what about that story? And he goes, oh, yeah, that's like my childhood. You should set it there. And so that was actually why I chose it. And that's sort of how we ended up there. And we were the first people to ever shoot like at Los Alamos Middle School. And it was it's an amazing place. It's got a very unique history.
Cody and Chloe, this is really strong material.